All right, today I want to talk about Emu, the shadow ruler of the world government and the leader of the Gorosei. So we all have our theories as to what this character is, what they could be planning, but I think I have it figured it out. And I didn't discover this, of course, myself. This was brought to light like 2 years ago by the GOAT Zhoniin, Japanese YouTuber who wears a Daft Punk mask. But he told me, well, all of us, about the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, which is, you know, a story that's over 1,000 years old in Japan. They don't even know who wrote this thing, but it's a story about the Moon Princess. And that's pretty interesting, right? Because we've seen this play out in other animes. Sailor Moon, Naruto is the most famous example. They're all kind of chasing the same dragon here with the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, in my opinion at least, because I think we already see it happening in One Piece. And yes, this is leading to Emu being a woman. It is not a man, in my opinion, it is straight up woman. Because she herself, I guess, could be considered the princess of the moon, or one of the moons of the One Piece world, as Ohara, not the YouTuber, Ohara, the actual place, the scholar, showed us that there are multiple satellite things around the world of One Piece. So, it seems like Emu, in theory, could be the final princess that Luffy has to save, but not save her from a war-torn country or a dictatorship, has to save her from herself. But let me quickly just tell you what the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter is. So, the story details the life of Kaguya Hime, a princess from the moon who was discovered as a baby inside the stalk of a glowing bamboo plant. After she grows, her beauty attracts 5 suitors seeking her hand in marriage, who she turns away by challenging them each with an impossible task. She later attracts the affection of the Emperor of Japan, and at the tale's end, Kaguya Hime reveals her celestial origins and returns to the moon. The story is also known as the Tale of Princess Kaguya. So, right there, a lot of things to draw away. 5 suitors. Gorosei. They are paralleling to that. That's who the Gorosei are. They are the 5 defectors of the kingdoms that we've already seen. We already speculated about. Samurai Gandhi clearly comes from Wano. There's no other place he can come from. Unless he's like, I don't know, in Wano Face or something. But I'm pretty sure he comes from there. And then, other than that, we have her falling in love with the Emperor of Japan. And in my opinion, I think in the One Piece story, this was Joy Boy. And before I let you guys talk, I think we've also seen parallels to this throughout the series. Through Enel, his story, his 5 disciples, what he did. Doflamingo, what he did, coming down from heaven to the normal people, taking over with his 5 disciples. And as for the love story, I think we've seen that paralleled between Sanji and Pudding. And I'll go more into that, but let me hear you guys' thoughts on this.
I love the Kaguya route. It just makes sense that Oda includes it. Like, it's such a, like you mentioned, it's an historical like story at this point that is included in so many Japanese fictions, some popular ones, and though the execution of their version of it may not be everyone's favorite, I feel like Oda probably has his head on straight with this. And so, like, I came to a similar conclusion to give insight, and I have the thumbnail made for it. I haven't put out the video yet, where I'm not gonna even reference the Kaguya thing in this thing, but the princess route, I think, like what you said, like, that's the last princess Luffy has to save. What I was saying is, in this video, I think I told Randy Troy it was on stream, was that I think that all the princesses throughout the entire story, you can combine like their primary elements, and that's probably what Emu has gone through. And the most important one at the moment, well, you know, Vivi obviously, but Bonnie's probably the most important one to me in that regard, where Bonnie's technically the last Saga's princess that got introduced at the very beginning of the last saga, similar to the Alabasta arc where with Vivi, right? And so with the reason why that's important is because Bonnie has beef with Vegapunk. Vegapunk is this super advanced place that, you know, obviously she can appreciate a lot of those things, but she does not forgive what he did to her father. And that trauma that she has gone through to see her dad cloned and cyborged and was bastardized essentially and created like the seraphim of him is like traumatic. And then we don't even know the backstory. Apparently the backstory of Kuma, and we don't know Bonnie's backstory alone, but those two things are probably going to be so heavy that it's going to be a taste of what Emu went through, because Emu probably is from the probably from the Void Century. I don't think that's a crazy take, but the Void Century had the Ancient Kingdom that was supposed to be more advanced than Vegapunk, and for some reason they fell to the world government and Eames the head of it. So it might be that the reason why they fell was because they traumatized like this princess essentially of that. And so I had this theory that like Eam was a part of the Ancient Kingdom, might actually be a byproduct of the Ancient Kingdom, and they defected, and so like one way or the other the whole princess theme definitely fits. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of the moon thing, yeah, they're like Wano's connected to the moon. They're all the clans are moon named, for example, and they're from the Void Century as well. Like Kozuki means light moon, Amatsuki means heaven moon, which comes back to my one of my theories that I said that the Amatsuki and Kozuki probably had a civil war during the Void Century, and the Amatsuki clan is probably the one that joined the Gorosei, like the royal family, so to say, in other kingdoms. And so that heaven moon is very interesting. You see that moon name come again. Then you get the Sulong. The Sulong, a lot of people don't realize this, but they're actually 100% connected to Emu in the sense of their eyes. Emu was shown with the double-layered eyes. When Minx goes Sulong, they also get the same red double-layered eyes. It's a slightly different, but it's the same thing. And we got introduced to them right before we got shown Emu's eyes. It was the Zoe arc and then Reverie, right? And so and then also, how do they go Sulong? They look at the moon, right? They go look at the moon and get memories of their ancestors. And so yeah, there's various theories on that route. But here's something, I'm gonna hit you guys with my own thing in a little bit, but with this one, I don't know if you're aware of this, Zhoniin. One of the most important characters that Oda has introduced to us in the SBS, but also throughout the entire manga, to the point where people have been on a rabid search for him, is Panda Man. Panda Man's, Oda gave him the backstory that he was bullied as a kid growing up for claiming to have seen Princess Kaguya. And we don't know Panda Man's origins. He was shown even in Nolan's backstory, but he's been like literally everywhere. I think he was like in Roger's flashback too, in chapter 0 that we referenced before. I think he's also there as well. And Oda's been talking about him so many times in the SBS, and even put his name on a poneglyph. And if Panda Man's anything, it could probably be a mink, right? Like that. If Panda Man was ever included in the canon story, probably a mink. And so for connecting those two dots, yeah, 100% I see the Kaguya reference to Eam, but I also see like a bunch of other. I feel like Oda's the kind of writer to, mesh a bunch of inspirations together, and it might be that Kaguya is probably one of the foundational ones. If I were to pick like on a multiple choice question. But yeah, I definitely see that. I love that train of thought.
No, I really enjoyed the Princess Kaguya route. I mean, yeah, it was done in Naruto, and I feel like that's where some people are. They're like, oh no, like this was a Naruto thing. I don't want this in my One Piece story. I don't want this in my cereal box. But the thing with that is that Oda and Kishimoto are really good friends, and I feel like this is a chance to do it differently too. Because I don't think anybody's gonna see this like Kaguya story and be like, "Whoa, you know, like we're gonna have Madara come in here too. What's next?" No, like the way Oda has been setting up this whole side story with Imu, which is crazy because we haven't met them once yet. Like literally, they're just a random character that we think is gonna be the final villain, right? And we have no real inklings as to how we're gonna get there. We have Luffy gunning for Pirate King, and then somewhere along the way, he's probably gonna go fight Im. Like that's just kind of like how we're all imagining this. And I'm on the same boat. And if it does have that princess route, then that could give more validity to why Luffy needs to go there. Because there's another princess that just needs subjugation, apparently.
Oh,
Which
no,
I'm
not
down for. I'm
subjugation.
down.
No, you're not.
It's a good meme. It's a good meme. Luffy always meets the princesses. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
He
but you could
is
say
a Pokemon
harem.
collector.
The meme is the harem side, not subjugation. Okay, I don't know what memes you're seeing. Like,
No. Subjugation is the same thing as romance, or not romancing, but you know, like becoming friends with somebody. Subjugation.
I just want everyone to know Sai is married. He's not. He's memeing around right now.
Subjugation is a term of endearment.
Hey, not all marriage is created equal.
Oh no.
Zhonin's running with it.
But I'll give you guys some more parallels, and we can go off of that. So, I think Enel is for sure the biggest parallel to Imu besides Doflamingo. Because Enel's whole thing is... Apparently he was a Birkin, which I don't really buy because, like... Does he say that he removed his own wings at some point?
No, but Oda did confirm that Haradis from Weberia, you know, the old people that trained Nami during the time skip.
Yeah, they're like Gonfalian people.
that Haradis is also a confirmed Birkin.
Okay.
So like just like Enel, and he doesn't have wings. So there is like Oda went out of his way to confirm that. But yeah, I agree with you. One of my biggest questions has always been like, do those wings like grow back? And when I feel like I said that, and then King had his wing cut off, and I was like, oh, finally we'll be able to see it. And then we didn't see it, and now I'm sad. But
It's like Dragon Ball, where you just remove the monkey tail.
True. And also,
It just grows back later.
I get the parallels of like, he is God, so he's not going to have wings like his disciples and whatever else. But his whole thing was about, I want to go to endless Earth or fairy Earth, however what translation you go by. But his whole thing was like, there's limitless amount of it, and it's like it's where God is supposed to be. And I think this is kind of like Imu in reverse a little bit, because Enel is going to the moon, because that's also how the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter ends. Kaguya eventually just becomes overcome with like, just I don't belong here. Like, that's also why she refuses the Emperor of Japan, who's the one person that she actually felt somewhat mutual for. It's kind of ambiguous, but with the five suitors, like the five Gorosei essentially, she didn't really love them. She just kind of like gave them the runaround, like put them in like the kind of like friend zone, but giving them hope that it could happen. She gave them like these impossible tasks.
Feels bad.
Yeah, like one of the tasks was like, hey, go get a colored jewel from a dragon's neck. So like, yeah, there's no way they could do that stuff. However, when the Emperor of Japan proposed to her, she never gave him like an impossible trial. She just simply rejected him because she couldn't live there anymore. She's not one of them. She had to return to the moon. That's like her ultimate thing, is going back to the moon, which she does at the end of the story. And that's kind of like Enel's journey, right? That's his arc. He goes to the moon because he feels that he belonged there. And another thing that we know, or at least it's implied through what Enel finds out on the moon through that cover story, is that whatever race came down from the moon kind of ran out of their resources, right? And they came to Earth because essentially that's what they want. It's limitless resources. So I think that's showing us more of that. Also with the fact that, you know, when he strikes down people for speaking against him, obviously we saw Imu do that with Lelougia, and implied to be using Uranus. So aside from that, another thing is that when Kaguya eventually decides to go back to the moon, She leaves, the emperor, she leaves a note to him, and they have this correspondence for a little bit, and then she eventually goes back. But when she does go back, she drinks a little bit of the elixir of immortality. And then she attaches it to a letter that she sends to the emperor and says, give it to him. I want him to have it, because, that's like the only person that she essentially had mutual feelings for, even though they weren't as strong as his own. And when the emperor finds out that she did this, he just destroys it. He's like, I don't want to live forever without her. And he goes to the top of the mountain and like burns whatever so that the smoke can maybe reach the moon, and then she'll feel what he's feeling. But that's essentially the end of the story. But elixir of immortality, super fascinating. But aside from that, as soon as Kaguya leaves, all of the sadness and compassion for the people of Earth that she had are forgotten. And that goes back to me paralleling it to Pudding and Sanji. Because it is a forbidden romance. They can't really be together, even though they're supposed to be, at least, through the oligarchy. And, Pudding has 3 eyes. In my opinion, I think Emu is also the original 3-eye race, which is just aliens. That's a whole thing for another time. But what Pudding does is she takes Sanji's memories from him so that he no longer is sad about what had happened. The sadness and the compassion, it's gone. He's forgotten. Same thing that is pretty much happened in the Void Century, right? That time is just forgotten. And it goes back to also what I said with the elixir of immortality, because Ibu has the eyes. I've been speculating. I don't know if you guys are fully on board with it. I know Sai is kind of, but the eyes that Zunisha, Mihawk, Emu, and Hakuba have, they all have the same eyes, and I think it is from the perpetual youth surgery being performed on them, the ultimate ability of the Ope Ope no Mi. Now, I think that whoever did it to Kaguya was probably Joy Boy. I know that doesn't make sense. I think it could be the reverse of this story. He forced Emu to be alive forever because for some reason she can't leave Mary Schwa. And I think that's where the true elixir of immortality is, which could be the chrysanthemums, the flowers that we always see associated with her. Also why it's maybe the celestial dragons wear those helmets. Aside from being astronauts, maybe they need the oxygen.
Aside from being astronauts, they just came back from Mars.
But yeah, what do you guys think about that?
I really like this, and I feel like the idea of immortality in One Piece, not just from the Ope Ope no Mi, but like even just like a regular drink, like from that story, there are hints of that. I know it's filler, and Oda probably had nothing to do with this, but there was an elixir of immortality hinted at in an early filler of One Piece, where they got it from the dragon blood, which I thought was always really interesting because it's like, oh, that was like before celestial dragons were a thing. That's before the perpetual youth surgery was a thing. And, filler isn't canon at all, but you could look at it and say, oh, maybe like Oda was inspired by some of these ideas and then kind of ran with it and put his own spin on it. So there being an elixir of immortality that has been used before, like on somebody like Im or the Gorosei, I feel like that is very plausible. And if you guys haven't watched that filler, I would definitely recommend to go check it out. It's one of the worst ones out there. I wanted to gouge my eyes out. It's so bad.
But just consume this garbage just for the sake of knowledge.
It's good. It's One Piece content. You can't hate it.
It's funny that Sai says that because he recently rewatched all of it, and I did the same thing with my wife. She was watching from the start, and she was like, oh, like she didn't want to skip the filler, and I was like, no, just skip it. But then I saw that, and I watched the first like 2 episodes of it, and I was like, wait, this is crack. This is insane, because a lot of people don't realize is Logtown, for example. There's filler in the anime, but those are all canon. Like Oda, that was stuff that he had to cut out of the manga, but he gave to like the anime to flesh out. Whether that's important or not, is a separate question. But right after that, or right before that, is the thing that the Sai's talking about with the dragon thing. And it's not just that, it's something even crazier. To give you guys some insight, there's a monologue by one of the main characters that's so boring, but like he says some insane things, like for example, the history of those people are they're descendants of a forgotten dragon people. They're all dragon people from an island that was destroyed by the world government thousands of years ago. And I was like, wait, hello? This is kind of important, guys. And then he talks about a special tree, a tree that's like woven by dreams and stuff like that. And so, obviously, if you know some stories about Kaguya, like, and other fictions and how they're woven together, then you see where it goes. And then you're like, wait, we have like a few important trees in One Piece, and we don't know where devil fruits come from. But what he's talking about right now kind of sounds like what is happening in Marriage Raw, which is funny because I was saying that that Eam might be part dragon race people, dragon fishmen, so to say. But I have a lot of really fun theories when it comes to Eam. And so to go back to the eyes thing, not to discount what Zhoniin was saying, but like I have a different perspective that still connects back to the Kaguya thing, still connects back to a lot of these things. So the double layered eyes for me, I made one of my oldest theories is that they're all like a dual soul type of thing. Like Hakuba Cavendish is obviously like there's a soul within him that creates that double eyes. So like when he's normal, he has normal eyes. When he's taken over by Hakuba, he has no eyes. When he's half and half though, that's when you get the double layered eyes. And so then like I applied that to every other iteration of that, and it made sense for a lot of them. But the one that I really liked was the Sulong one, the mink one, because the minks, they're normal, and then they look at the moon, they can get the memories of an ancestor, and then they get the double layered eyes. And what I was saying earlier that connects to Eam, because in the Kaguya story, from memory, she came down to earth like as desiring a certain kind of life, and she didn't necessarily have the memories that she had. And then somewhere later on, through one way or the other, she regained those memories, and the memories she got were from the moon. And so it ties that like word for word connection ties back to the minks, but it also implies that like, like these memories could change a person, which is why like memories is so important, like you're saying with pudding, right? The three-eyed connection, I definitely see that too. I can see that mixing in, but with the Emu perspective specifically, I'm seeing it like they're at this point in the story, the reason why Eam has those double layered eyes is because they're tapped into the moon, which is another crazy theory that I have, which honestly I don't think is that crazy, is that the moon in One Piece, I have a few different iterations that make this make sense, but one version of it is that, you know how we have like punk records in the current timeline, and everything that Vegapunk has done, there's been like allusion to a Void Century version, so like Vega Force 1, and then there's the legendary Iron Giant as the most concrete example. But like there's the fact that he has the sea beast, the mechanized sea beast under his control, that's like the Poseidon, right? Like there's these iterations of the Void Century into what he's done. And so I think that the punk records is also something that would make sense that exists in the past, because why would he be the only holder of his devil fruit, right? Luffy's not the first holder of his devil fruit from what we understand, and even if he was the first person to take it to Vegapunk's extent, there has to be some source. So my thought line is that in the Void Century there was a larger version of punk records, and where I landed on was the moon because of various connections. One of my favorite ones is that the moon clans on Wano, like all of them are named as moon clans, but when you zoom out on Wano and you look at the map of Wano, it's shaped like a brain. It's even split up into 5 parts where you get like the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, like the brain stem. Like Oda even drew a brain stem. I was like, why did he do that? And so there's a lot more of those connections, but one way or the other, if Eam's looking at the moon and getting memories from it, then that double layered eye connection makes a lot of sense. And one way or the other, Moon, Eam, Kaguya, Oda can blend all those concepts together. Like we're seeing with Egghead, right? Like there's obviously like Terminator, Star Wars, like there's so many futuristic things that I think he's going to incorporate into the Kaguya route. But one of my favorite ones at the moment for the Kaguya thing is whether she's like from the moon or is the moon or is connected to the moon. I like the idea because I think Kaguya, and again, the reason why I'm so blurred on what the actual story is so many fictions have touched on that story that it's hard to know or remember what like the real one was. But I think Kaguya like loved the earth and like loved the people on it, and that reminds me of the framework that Oda has for the entire story, which is like pirates, ships, and all that. And one of the most important connections that he made, or not connections, but like, yeah, like real lore connections, is Kaboterman. He made it so like this Kaboterman of the Going Merry is so sentient that it created a person, like it created a little child that fixed the ship, that was able to sail the ship, that came because it was loved so much by its crewmates. And you know, just to fast forward through the theory, you guys can watch the video, it's a long video, so the reason why I'm not explaining it here. But I was saying that either the another thing that was romanticized when Oda, especially in his childhood, was the space race, like us going to the moon. That was happening in his like he was born on the onset of that. And so one thing that was said throughout that entire time was that the Earth is a spaceship that we all share, and that we all should love and we all should care about. And so my current idea is that Eam is the Kaboterman of the Earth, or the Kaboterman of the moon. And the moon one makes sense because the moon is like a desolate place that was abandoned. They jumped shipped to a blue Earth, to a better ship. But I like the Earth one because the way that would fit in with the Void Century, right? Because the other part of a Kaboterman is that they show up when their ship is doomed. So it would play a really cool role for Kaguya Eam to see like the thing that they love is doomed, and that's why they showed up. That's why they're in power. That's why they're trying to reset the equilibrium so that they could survive, or like life can be maintained and stay the same, which is, you know, can be problematic in a lot of different ways. So one way or the other, I love the route with Enel, Kaguya. So many parallels in One Piece, 100%.
So I do like what you're saying with the eyes meaning dual souls, because that's very plausible as well. I'm like, I'll say 90% sure on the immortality, the perpetual youth surgery, but I'm open to other stuff for sure. And I like the parallel soul thing because, you know, how else would you explain Hakuba? But going back to what we're talking about, the dragon stuff, which is, it leads me to the final thing that I want to discuss here, and it's what Imu's devil fruit, which I'm pretty sure she does have one for sure. She has to. It just wouldn't make sense.
It's got to be broken.
Well, it is. It's the best devil fruit. If it is in fact this one. So, in the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, the moon that Kaguya-hime ascends to, it was like a mythical type of place, more so, not like more so literally supposed to be the moon. But it's referred to as, get this, the Undersea Dragon Palace, which is the palace of Ryujin, or the Dragon God. And I think that's what her fruit is. It's going to be something like the fish fruit mythical model Ryujin, which would be like Dragon King model. And this allows her to have control over water. Like, that is her ability. And that explains why the world is the way that it is, and why devil fruits have a weakness to water, because she made it that way. It angers the sea god, or the sea devil. That is Imu. She is the sea devil. She was the whole time. She orchestrated all of this, and that's why the tides are the way that they are, and how everything came to be with the Calm Belt and the Grand Line. Also, why the jewel ice sheet perpetually regenerates when it's broken, because this is like a whole other thing. But I think when she had the mass slaughter of the ancient giants, that's where their grave is, and she made it so that the ice can never fully be broken, so that they'll never be discovered. That's also how Moria got the ores and whatnot. Also, and why did she kill them? Because I think she used them to make the Grand Line. Not the Grand Line, I'm sorry, the Red Line. Moria says that they were continent pullers in the past. I think that lines up. And then after she had them do that, she slaughtered all of them and then threw them in the jewel ice sheet. But aside from that, I think that her devil fruit is this. And she has the ability to control water. Not like a Logia, like she can't produce it, but I think she could just control it if it's there.
I think one thing interesting about the water controlling ability is that we know that Oda wants to get goofy with the One Piece fights in the future, right? Like Luffy has this cartoony Gear 5th ability. So when I put the water in terms of Luffy fights, I could see Oda mixing in art styles too, like getting absolutely bonkers with it. So if Kaguya does control water, like a lot of people are assuming, maybe he brings in watercoloring.
Yes.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm just like, if Oda's going back and he's doing the rubber hose animation with Luffy's Gear 5th, then, you know, watercoloring, realism, I feel like we're going to see a different art style altogether when we get to that finale.
Yeah, wait,
it's a clash of art styles.
I think you're thinking the same thing as me, Par, but go ahead.
Whether Eam
Did
has
it just trigger a primordial fear? What happened?
I'm like, because the way you said that, like, just was so, I don't know, the watercolor thing. Like, I feel like if I said that in a video, people would be like, nah, he's crazy. But like, the thing is, I said, the way I see the end stage of One Piece, not necessarily gravitating toward devil fruits, where it could, right? Like an ultimate devil fruit would make a lot of sense. I'm not saying that it's not there. But if Eam is truly from the Void Century and like a progenitor of a lot of the like devil fruits and power systems or whatever, or connected to at least, then I could see them having a similar power as like the original Nika, for example, right? Like if Nika is in a devil fruit and is procured from a source, right? Like, then that original person didn't have a devil fruit. Devil fruits came from that person, and Nika apparently has the power of, like you said, like imagination. And so I have an entire video that says that Eam's name might be Eam Majin, so like imagine, and that ties back to a wordplay that seems like it could be there with Void, Empty Throne, and Eam. A lot of those the kanji behind them can be connected to the word imaginary. And so what I was saying is that the last fight would be a battle of imagination. That sounds goofy, but the thing is, like, imagination, it's not like the same things clashing. We, like, Zhoniin just said, like, I think we're thinking about the same thing, but we might say it in a completely different way. And one of the things I was saying is, well, Joy Boy is being connected to music. You can get a message across music differently than a message across a book, differently than a message across a painting. And the thing is, what we saw of Eam at taking out Leloucia was them holding a paintbrush. So what I was saying was that Eam might be able to evocate their imagination through painting, and Joy Boy through music, and it might be that's the clash. Whereas, like, we see Oda, right, his version of that is he does it through a manga panel, right? Like, his imagination is there. And so I would love it if Oda did that and put those imagination tools against each other. And water painting, like coloring, that would be so sick from a visual standpoint, from like a industry standpoint, from like so many different directions. And I agree with what Zhoniin said, like, one way or the other, the water powers are going to come through. I think that, like, the water powers are definitely going to come through. It's just it's just how creative Oda is going to be with it. And I see, as far as what Sai is saying with the water painting, I love that a lot.
This is a great way to end the video, because Sai, just like Par was saying, the watercolor stuff is not far-fetched, because there could be, first of all, parallels to Miss Golden Week. First
Yes.
Giola.
I love you.
No,
guys.
Giola's coming next. This is
Like,
where the
Oda-
bomb's getting dropped. The bomb's
Oda
getting
loves
dropped.
these weird AF characters, man. Like,
So look at this.
I don't know what
Look
it is.
at this thing that Giola makes. Okay? This is the story of One Piece. This is what we were talking about. Look at the person to the left. That's Emu, the eye right there. And you see on the left of the person, it kind of represents what's happening with Laugh-Tale. I think, in my opinion, she's taking Laugh-Tale and then snuffing it out, and then the person below, right with the crown, who is Momo in this instance, but I think that's Joy Boy.
I'm trying to pull up the painting myself, but I know what you're talking about. I have the image in my head.
Oh no, I
Yeah.
That is
posted it in
cursed
Discord.
artwork. I can't believe Giola's canon.
The thing is, Giola isn't like 100. I'm not.
Don't break
discounting
her
what
at it until
Giola-
down.
The don't break. Yo, I forgot that she's there, honestly, because she was off Dressrosa fighting. But Miss Golden Week, 1000%. One thing about Miss Golden Week was that she broke into prison and broke out Baroque's work. Like basically solo. Everybody didn't like, she was basically the person who did it. And she broke out even Crocodile, but Crocodile didn't go. And the thing was, right before that cover story ended, what she did was she painted using the color, the rainbow color, and she showed everybody who saw it their dreams. And we saw what Crocodile's dream looked like. We saw Mr. One's, I believe, as well. And so like there we go, another connection from painting and how powerful painting can be. And then Giola's one, 100,000%. When Giola showed up, I was like, wait, this is kind of insane. How do you beat this? And so like if that's the sentiment you kind of get off of a power, and it would make sense that Ian gets that. But then also Miss Golden Week was able to, with a single color, I think it was black betrayal, and then her symbol, she was able to make Luffy betray his crew. Like he made, and then that image that you just sent in the thing, that looks like Film Red, right? Like it just reminds me of Film Red instantly. So I see it.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about Emu because, of course, we haven't talked about this character enough. And we got another theory about what their devil fruit could be, or what their true form could be. And I got my boy Sai with me, as always, on these break weeks. What's up, Sai?
Yo, what's up, guys?
So
Thanks for having me, Zhoniin.
Yeah, anytime. Just subscribe to Sai and don't subscribe to me. You guys know what the deal is.
Or vice versa, either one.
So in
I prefer the vice versa.
Vice versa for sure, as long as it's reverse and it's coming back at you. But in chapter 185, we see what is implied to be Emu's devil fruit transformation, right? I mean, I assume that's what this is. I guess you do too. You're not like one of those crazy pedantic people that's like, no, that's not what it is.
That's their real form. They just got taller. For Emu, I know we just talked about how crazy these people are. I think there is like that 10% chance that this isn't a devil fruit, because this was from 800 years ago. So I think anything's on the table. We don't know when devil fruits came into existence, but maybe this is like the first devil fruit, for example. Like I feel like there's something there, but if it is a devil fruit, which is what I'm leaning towards, I feel like we got an interesting chance.
Yeah, I agree for sure. If it's not the first devil fruit, it's at least one of them. Like, I just have this strong feeling that Emu and Dagorose and, maybe Joy Boy or whoever had first pick of the devil fruits. Like, they even probably had something to do with planting the trees that fruited these fruits, or bared these fruits, maybe. But there's little evidence to go off of that stuff right now. But as for Emu's possible fruit, I originally talked about it probably being like some kind of, I don't know, dragon or something like that. Less of like an Easter dragon the way that Kaido is, more of like a Western dragon like that we see on Punk Hazard. It could be something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Or it could be the title of this video. It transforms Emu into the Florian Triangle Monster. Because like
that is still unexplained. What
Exactly.
a mystery.
So still unexplained and still never addressed. Never even shown again since then. It almost makes me think that like it wasn't even something Oda really cared about. He just kind of put it there to be like, ooh, spooky, and then just like, all right, Never again.
I'm not gonna lie. Back when I read that for the first time, I got kind of scared. I had to like lock my door after I saw the narrator box, and it was like, "Ooh, hundreds of ships disappear." I was like, "Oh God, Mom, please close my door." Turn on my light, my night light.
So I'm glad you mentioned the hundreds of ships disappear, because that's going to go into what this fruit could be. So for sure, I think that the Florian Triangle monster, or whatever it is based off of the Umibozu, which is like a long time Japanese like supernatural folklore thing, or yokai as they say. And what this thing is it's just some big apparition type thing, humanoid in shape, usually black with like 2 glaring eyes, maybe could be red. A lot of artist renditions have it using or have it with red eyes. Actually, a lot of artist renditions, it looks straight up like Emu. Now, I don't know what Oda's doing. You know, none of us can understand how his brain works, but random people on Reddit
I like the Umibozu theory. I feel like we're gonna have to run into one eventually. Just with Oda being Japanese and that being such a prominent thing, and One Piece taking place 90% on water, on sea, I feel like Umibozu is going to come into play as like a mythical devil fruit.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Oh yeah. Like, as far as the Florian Triangle, I got some interesting takes with this one. And the main one is that we know how Luffy is the sun god, right? And a main thematic of One Piece is Luffy bringing the dawn, or certain characters bringing the dawn. And that's like huge, it's symbolic, and it also is quite literal because Luffy is the sun god. I feel like having whatever this is, right? Umibozu, Emu, some strange monster hidden in the Florian Triangle, I feel like that's significant because when the narrator talks about it, they say that it's hidden by this thin white veil. And something we know about the Florian Triangle is that it's never exposed to light. Thriller Bark lives in perpetual darkness. So I feel like what lingering in the Florian Triangle, it's not an ally. It's not going to be friends with Sun God Luffy. It's definitely going to be someone on Emu's camp, if not Emu themselves, or maybe even another member of the Gorosei. Because this transformation, like Umibozu or whatever we want to call this, it does somewhat look like the wacky silhouettes we got back in chapter 1085.
Now, yeah, but it's not necessarily as big as the Florian Triangle monster. The Florian Triangle monster, I don't know, rough scale, is larger than Zunisha. You know,
yeah, it's larger than mountains in the real world.
Yeah, just rough estimate.
It's kind of scary.
But it is possible that Emu can, you know, shapeshift, because, you know, if you just go through the Umibozu wiki, it says that there's multiple accounts or just multiple tellings of it where it varies in size. So maybe it can get bigger, maybe it gets smaller. I mean, that's not uncommon for One Piece characters with fruit abilities. Like, sometimes they can get massive, like Pika, you know, like his fruit made him like, you know, gigantic. And Pizarro, he can like take over islands with his ability, and he becomes the skull on Hachinosu. So I don't think that's too far out of the realm of possibility.
Oh, not at all.
Let me go a little more into what Umibozu is all about. So it's like this big apparition that appears in the water if you go into its territory. So that's even more so going into Florian Triangle stuff. It's like a specific place where they usually dwell. And sometimes it can ask you like, am I scary, or something like that. That's like plays into a lot of Japanese supernatural stuff. Like, it'll ask you a question or something. So that's kind of part of the course. But what it also does, it demands a barrel from you, or a bucket. Like, it wants like a barrel or a bucket. And if you give it like a standard one, it's gonna like scoop up seawater and then just pour it on your ship until it sinks you. So that makes me think like, okay, so that's kind of like going what devil fruits are, you know, the weakness that you have once you eat a devil fruit, you can't swim anymore and you have weakness to water. And I always thought that Emu had something to do with that, because they say that, or Shanks, I'm pretty sure said it, right? That the devil fruit was enchanted by sea devils. Whoever eats it gets amazing powers, but the sea turns against them. It's like, what are the sea devils? And, or just straight up, what is the sea devil if there's just a singular one? You can go off of multiple translations with that. And I'm thinking like, it could be Emu. Like, Emu has, like, I don't know, the sea devil fruit or something like that. Because, you know, also when we see Sabo shoot that fire at Emu, like, the mouth looks very monstrous, dragonous, or whatever. It's, like, super sharp teeth. Aside from that, the way that you can, like, I don't know, outsmart the Umibozu is giving it a barrel that doesn't have a bottom to it, so it's kind of just stuck on an infinite loop of like trying to scoop up water, and it gets like confused or something, and then you can sail away. So yeah, I don't know what that has to do with anything. I don't know, maybe it's a clue to defeating Emu.
No, it's definitely a clue. Because, do you remember the beginning of Thriller Bark?
Refresh me.
So what kicked off this entire island arc was that the Straw Hats found a barrel of sake just floating on the ocean. And, you know, obviously they picked it up and then Zoro drank a lot of it. And on the barrel, it actually said, offering to the sea god.
Oh.
And then we later learned that it was a trap from Moria's group, and there was no sake in it at all. And that is what alerted Thriller Bark to their presence, and then Moria came and picked them up. But that does fall in line with the lore of the yokai Umibozu. So I definitely enjoy that. And I can see why this would make the most sense out of anything, too.
Yeah.
Like, the shape matches up, the lore kind of matches up. Hidden in the darkness, it matches up. And hey, Oda's Japanese, so low be it for me to say Oda wouldn't bring in Japanese mythology here.
I mean, that is very, very true. I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, he's been doing it this whole time.
Oh, yeah.
One last thing about the Umibozu here is that apparently there are tales of them shape-shifting into a beautiful woman and engaging in swimming contests with humans. And, you know, I constantly spouted out that I think Emu's a woman. So that, I don't know, maybe it could be something too. Also about the barrels, it makes me think of Bink Sake. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the latest chapter of One Piece where we learned Emu's real name, like the full name, like Emu Nerona. Some people have been splitting up the Nerona part to say Nure Ona, which is like water woman, which is another yokai as well.
Oh.
So that could fit. That could fit. I mean, obviously, we see the obvious, like, narrow and like inspiration, but it could be multifaceted. It could be both. I think Nure Ona could be another solid yokai.
And it just goes ultimately back to, even if it's not Umibozu or whatever, I just do think at the core of it, Emu does have the ability to somewhat control water. Like, not water logia, but like, you know, like just manipulate water if it is in the vicinity to some extent or something. So all of that I think does connect here, regardless of what it ultimately is. I do think woman, water, and then there's some kind of supernatural element to it.
Water, woman, shapeshifter. I think those are the lines where everybody's kind of at, and I really enjoy that. And a hot theory that I want to throw out there myself is that when I first saw Emu's design in 1085, the first thing my mind went to was a cartoon devil. Just when we saw that tail and just the way it's shaped, I was like, oh, okay. Like, they can shapeshift, they can do all this weird stuff. And when it goes about, like, defying logic and even, like, controlling water, I feel like being cartoony allows you to do all of that, right? Like, we saw Luffy, grab lightning when he was fighting Kaido. He rubberized it. I feel like Emu will have some sort of ability that is akin to that. Yeah, and that could allow them to be yokais too. Like, they could be anything they imagine, just like Luffy.
Yeah, just the antithesis to Luffy. I mean, that's what it is ultimately, right? Sun versus the moon. So Emu's fruit should be the antithesis to Luffy's fruit.
Oh yeah, and there's something really interesting about like the monster, like we talked about. Like it's hidden in the darkness, right? Luffy's the sun. Then it's like, oh, like he's got to bring the dawn to him, right? Give him the sun. Give him the vitamin D. Same with Emu.
Give him multiple D's, to be honest. I mean, if Emu is a woman after all. But also, you're wondering, like, why would Emu be in the Florian Triangle? And it's like, I don't know. Why? Because of the darkness. But also, a rough look at the unofficial map of One Piece. Like, you could just Google it. I don't think Oda has ever made an official one yet. I mean, if he kind of did, it would give people too much insight.
It would break everything.
But Florian Triangle shouldn't be too far away from Marijois. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility for, I don't know, Emu to just go there, I don't know, just to stretch her legs or whatever. You know, it would be different if it was like way far away. Then it would be a little harder to kind of justify that. But Florian Triangle's like not too far. So, you know, it's not too much of a stretch.
One thing that's interesting that I like to go back to as well is that Emu, being from the Nerona family, right? We don't know if they're like from 800 years ago. We don't know if this is a brand new Emu quite yet. But regardless, the Nerona family definitely came from some country, just like the Nefertari family, just like the Don Quixotes. So that means that the Nerona country is out there somewhere, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was hidden within the Florian Triangle.
Oh.
Like maybe that's where it was, and then it got deleted, or maybe it's, you know, somewhere near Navy HQ. The kingdom that they came from has to be there somewhere. It could even be God's Valley, for all we know. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things when you think about what 800 years could do to you and your family if you're the ruler of the world.
Yeah, I hope to find
There's a
out
lot of
one
things
day.
out there.
But
Imagine we learned it in an SBS, just the interview.
yeah, why not at this point?
He doesn't show us. He's like, well, if you guys want to know about Emu, just show up to the next interview.
All right, I'm with my boy Sai, and once again,
What is up?
Once again, we are going to be talking about Emu's devil fruit because, you know, we haven't talked about it enough. You know,
We couldn't get enough of this.
we've speculated about Emu being a dragon. We speculated about Emu being the Umubozu. So now we're going to be speculating about Emu being another thing, possibly. Just keep in mind,
Yes.
Emu could be her or his devil fruit could be whatever you want it to be, because we have no idea at this point. I mean, we're going to be going over tons of stuff, including the silhouette. You know, we love going over silhouette piece stuff. So first of all, this theory is coming from my favorite One Piece YouTuber, Zhoniin. Should go give him a follow. He's a Japanese YouTuber, and he's crazy with the One Piece stuff. He's probably
It's insane.
Yeah, he's probably going to give you more of an insight into this stuff than the YouTubers that you're currently following, simply because he is Japanese and he can like go between the lines and stuff. You know, like us English speakers can't. But recently, with the discovery of what the Gorosei devil fruits are, he started to speculate more about Emu because, you know, the Gorosei are beasts in some way. They're all mythical Zoans. They're all like yokais or mythical like creatures in some way. So naturally, Emu is probably going to be the same, especially because back at the Reverie, we saw Emu's silhouette, and he or she is probably a beast the way that they are. So first of all, like, what do you, just your strong opinion or your leading opinion, what did you think?
My
What do
leading
you
opinion?
think? Yeah, did you even have an opinion on what Emu's devil fruit could be?
Oh yeah. Ever since day one. I still haven't changed, I will admit. Learning about the theory we're about to talk about today kind of wavered me a little bit, but I still believe that Emu is a cartoon devil.
Oh,
Something out of like Cuphead, yeah. So that Luffy would have an opponent that could have the same goofy abilities that he has. Because right now, like, we're fighting a bunch of serious characters, they're kind of getting memed on, and I'm like, okay, the only person that could really give Luffy a run for his money, it would be like the antithesis of him, other than Blackbeard, of course, since he'll just negate it, would be Emu. You know, because for Blackbeard, he could probably just negate Luffy's powers, and then they'll have to fight mano a mano, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But what about the cartoon aspect? You know, I want an opponent on that level, and I'm like, yo, like, if Emu was a cartoon devil, that'd be pretty sick.
yeah, I could see that.
Kind of like Aku from Samurai Jack, even.
Yeah, it would have to match up with Luffy. They would both have the Toon Force abilities, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Well, this theory is not a cartoon devil. This is actually more mythology-based. Actually, a different kind of one. A philosopher actually came out with this stuff, Plato. But we'll go more into that. So, the first thing that makes Zhoniin think that this could be a strong possibility. I mean, first of all, it came from like a comment in his comments section, another Japanese viewer. But if we take a look at the empty throne in Marijuana, the throne that Emu sits upon, the armrests are like lions. Now,
Yes.
does that mean anything? No, it doesn't have to mean anything. It could just be a cool design. It doesn't really have to symbolize anything. But underneath, like, the armrest, you kind of see, like, I don't know, almost like a serpentine shape.
Kind of like a snake design, right?
It kind of looks like it. To me, it kind of looks like
You know,
it.
the guy likes snakes.
I mean,
Yeah.
this could be confirmation bias. I mean, this video is confirmation bias for sure, but it kind of looks that way. And that's because that's what the demiurge is. That's like the whole crux of this video. That Emu's mythical Zhoniin devil fruit could be based off of the demiurge, which, like we're pointing out on the empty throne here, is like this lion-headed serpent creature with human arms. Now, to go a little more into it, it's an artisan-like figure responsible for fashioning and maintaining the physical universe. Now, that's also interesting because that probably relates to Imu as well, because, in my opinion at least, I'm pretty sure Imu is the one that's responsible for the way the world in One Piece is right now. Like the red line, the calm belt, the elevation of the water, all of that stuff. Are you on board with that?
I am as well. When you think about how weird the red line is in the world, and how so many problems would be fixed if the red line were destroyed, it does feel like Imu has something to do with that. So I don't know where that theory spawned. I feel like a lot of people have talked about that, like, hey, the red line is artificial, and it's like, yeah. I feel like a majority of the community kind of come together with this theory and kind of agree, which is kind of cool. You hardly get that. So yeah, I am on the boat that one way or another, Imu definitely had a part to play in the creation of the red line.
So it would line up with the demiurge, in mythology at least, created by Plato, being the creator of the world, because that's kind of what Imu is. Also, I think Imu also represents the Earth. If we're looking at like the Gorosei, how they're all planets in the solar system, Imu is probably Earth, as where, Luffy is the sun. Also, speaking of that, another interesting thing about the demiurge is that if you look around for some depictions of it and some imagery, it's associated with planets in the solar system. And there's even sometimes where it's like behind the sun, in front of the sun, or biting the sun, which is pretty interesting. The sun, big iconography in One Piece to the good guys. Imu, probably more related to the moon. Not always the bad guys, but usually the moon is associated with bad guy stuff. Another little just side thing I want to put out there. In Japanese, she is 4, and she is lion. So that means maybe 4 times 4 is 16, and then 16's significant number is like the 16 holy bullets that we see Daffy use against Luffy, but then also the Mother Flame, or Uranus, the rays that come down are 16, and 16 is supposed to be like the holy divine number, which allegedly associates with Imu. I know, what are you talking about? This is nonsense. I get it, but just got to put it out there in case some of you guys like that stuff. So
yeah, 16 is pretty crazy. I mean, it's kind of everywhere when you really think about it.
I know. I feel like
when it comes to like Marie Joie.
Yeah, if you look into it,
you just keep on seeing the numbers.
Yeah, you could just keep seeing 16 if you want to. But I don't think it's a coincidence. There's definitely like obviously 16 holy bullets from Daffy. That's not like some weird made up thing. Like Oda obviously did that intentionally, and we've talked about it before. I think Daffy is a direct parallel to Imu, the same way that Enel is. But going back to the silhouette that we see of Imu's Zoan form, or devil fruit form, she or he is like coming down the altar and has like those 2 arms with that ambiguous shaped head and sharp teeth, because we see like the mouth open and destroy Sabo's flames. That shape, if you wanted to, can look the way that the demiurge.
Say that.
Yeah, it looks like the way that the demiurge is shaped. I mean, at least I think so. I mean, also, granted, before I've said that Imu is probably like a dragon type devil fruit or something, and that could also be a dragon, but I don't know. Looking at the demiurge now, it could also line up with that too.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when you look at Imu's silhouette coming down from the throne, it could literally be anything.
Yeah, it could just be
so many things it could be.
A big man.
Yeah, a big man, just anything. And that's kind of where I started leaning to my theory of like the cartoon devil, because yeah, it is a goofy shape. But I mean, the Demiurgus, like the way he looks, right? It's like this weird lion snake with arms. And there's many depictions of him. This is just one of them because he can apparently shapeshift as well. And I'm like, hey, if that's the case, then that's perfect, right? Like, and you said earlier that there's many depictions of Demiurgus biting the sun. And what we see in that chapter is he eats Sambo's flame. So it's like, okay, you know, I like this theory. I feel like it does have some pretty good backing to it. But yeah, and also I like just saying his name as well.
Yeah, it is cool. But speaking of the name, like we said, it was made by Plato as like a, you know, creator type of false god, which is also interesting because Imu is obviously the false god of the One Piece world, which will eventually be revealed. But also in that manuscript, where the demiurge comes from that Plato made, is also the Atlantis legend, interestingly enough. And Atlantis was a place, you know, we all know what Atlantis is at this point, but it was like this great advanced civilization that sank into the sea due to a great flood and earthquake. And, you know, some of you are thinking, whoa, that's kind of like the ancient kingdom. Because we know that the ancient kingdom obviously is no longer here. They went away because they opposed Imu and the world government. And we actually found out from Vegapunk that they were super advanced. Like, they were pretty much the way that Egghead Island was. And, you know, like we also talked about, there was apparently like a great flood at some point in the One Piece world, probably during the Void Century. And, you know, that's responsible for why the sea level is raised the way that it is. So Atlantis is probably what the ancient kingdom was, or Laugh Tale, which also probably parallels to Imu being the demiurge, or at least just Oda basing some part of the story off of Plato's manuscript.
Oh yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, when you think about the One Piece, it's kind of crazy that nobody has just stumbled upon it, right? Like, hey, if you're just sailing around past the Grand Line in the New World, how can you just not find Laugh Tale? You know, it's been 40, 20 years. You know, even before that, like, nobody's found it in hundreds of years. Like, it's crazy. So it has to be either sunken deep into the ocean. So when you think about the One Piece and Laugh Tale, it's always so strange that nobody has just randomly stumbled upon it, right? Like, hey, you know, after Roger found it and it inspired the great pirate era, like, nobody found Laugh Tale. And then even before Roger, you're telling me hundreds of years passed and nobody just randomly stumbled upon it. Joy Boy's treasure. Like, there's no way. Like, the only two real options I have come to is that it's either sunken into the ground like Atlantis, or it's kind of like the One Piece filler episode where it's an invisible island that you have to show up to at a certain time of day that, you know, it just magically appears. Like those are the only real two options, and I'm like, okay. Like, out of the two of those, though, I feel like Atlantis is the more plausible route, especially because it's such a popular myth as well. Like, almost everybody knows about Atlantis. I don't even know where I learned about Atlantis, but I feel like from an early age, it's like, oh, yeah, there's like the lost city of Atlantis. It's somewhere down there. It's hidden. It's hidden.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I kind of wanted to find it at one point, you know? Like, oh, let me go into the ocean. Let me, you know, like, let me swim down a little bit. Got to see if it's down there.
I mean, there's still some adults who are unironically looking for it as we speak.
Yep, they're still hunting for the One Piece.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that the myth of the Demiurgus, like, he kind of ties in Atlantis as well. Like, I feel like this is an all-encapsulating theory, and that's why I really enjoy this as, like, in general.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm on board with Imu being the demiurge. I'm also on board with Imu being the cartoon devil. As long as it's not as goofy as Gear 5, there needs to be a balance to the goofiness. And I'm also on board with a dragon or the Umibozu. It all works for me. But that's it.
There's not really a bad answer, huh?
Well, that remains to be seen.
wait. Have you heard some bad ones? Wait. What is it?
No. I'm just saying it just remains to be seen. Oda could just drop the ball, and then it's just something just not good.
I feel like the one way Oda could ruin it, or not ruin it, but you know what I mean. Like, the one mess up I think Oda could do, and he could get away with it, is by making Imu ugly. Like, making their human appearance just butt ugly.
The fake straw hats, like the fake Robin and the fake Nami.
Like the fake straw hats. I remember their names. I I think that the main dude's name is Damaro Black, the forked tongue. Oh, or like Orochi from Wano, right? Like he had a cool devil fruit, but
True.
it's marred by his ugly appearance, so it's like, damn.
True. I mean, that
That's what I'm
could
kind of
be
afraid
why she doesn't want her face or his or her face shown. It's always hiding.
Yeah, what if they're just allergic to the sun?
That'd
be crazy,
That
too.
would be something.
Oh, yeah, allergic to the sun, and then they have to fight the sun god, so it's like, oh no, where's my sunscreen?
So yet again, we're going to be talking about Emu's possible true form. I've got my boy Sai with me. We've made quite a few videos about Emu already.
Just at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm going to make like a whole just compilation video of the Emu stuff that we've done so far. But in this video, it's different, promise, because we're once again reacting to a Dawn and Dusk video. Check out Dawn and Dusk if you haven't already. Great channel, deep cut Japanese One Piece stuff. But the long and the short of it is that Emu's true form, whether it is devil fruit or some kind of other thing that Emu and the Gorosei are doing with possible yokais or demon forms or whatever, is like a dragon or like a demonic type of dragon, and more so resembles like the type of dragon that we saw in Punk Hazard, which, aside from the other stuff that we've talked about throughout, the last year or so, I've always kind of thought that, because the main thing, I guess, for me is just the way that Emu's transformation looks in that chapter when Sabo is in the throne room and launches that fire at Emu and Emu eats it. I always thought that silhouetted mouth looked like the mouth of the big red orange dragon from Punk Hazard. And Dawn and Dusk has those two panels side by side, and it just makes me think that even more at this point. I know that you, Sai, are not really 100% on board with Emu being a dragon, but...
Oh, no, whoa, I'm 100%. I like this.
Oh, you're back on? All right, cool.
No, yeah. I mean, hey, it depends on what side of the bed I wake up on, but I go between Emu being akin to Luffy and then Emu being an actual Western dragon, which is what we're referring to here. Because I like both theories a lot.
Yeah, because also, and we'll get into this, but it's just the word dragon. It's thrown around so much in this series that
Celestial dragon.
It has to end with Emu being something like that, or at least the controlling party being a dragon of some sort. But there's usually multiple depictions of dragons too, which is interesting in One Piece. We've got we've been talking about the Western one with the wings, and then there's the Eastern one, the serpent type that doesn't have wings.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool about this distinction too is that the Celestial Dragons have shown an affinity towards the dragons, the Western dragons that we saw at Punk Hazard. Because if you go to the data books, the Vivre cards, we actually learn that the red dragon that we saw at Punk Hazard is named number 13. And there's 2 different versions of this. In the manga, Brownbeard says that the Celestial Dragons loved that dragon so much, they took a liking to it, that they gave it that name. But they're not too sure why or how. But if you go to the Vivre card, there's another piece of information that kind of fights against this, which is kind of weird, right? Manga versus Vivre card. But the Vivre card says that Dr. Vegapunk named the dragon number 13. So it's a weird toss-up with this, but either way, the Celestial Dragons do like Western dragons a lot. And going to some One Piece anime filler, and this is early filler, so Oda was definitely involved back in the day, in 2005, but one of the first filler arcs we had in One Piece had to do with the Straw Hats encountering what is called a Millennium Dragon, which is a Western dragon that has this immense power. And Oda loves his dragons at this point, right? Western versus Eastern. I'm excited to see what Oda's cooking up here. And I think there is a reason why the Celestial Dragons are named dragons at the end of the day. I think Emu could be what we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, I mean, also because, they are called the Celestial Dragons. So, it makes sense to name, your faction
at least
after,
one of them.
What you are.
Yeah, there's got to be at least one dragon in the group, right? They can't all be yokai.
I mean, there is one dragon in the group of the good guys, Luffy's father. Let's get into him, because... There's also seems to be 2 dragons kind of going on in this series at points. In Wano, we had Kaido, and then there was Momonosuke, the good and the bad, or just 2. You needed one to, I don't know, maybe go against the other. Punk Hazard, there was also 2 dragons. So it's possible that what's going on here in the big, broader spectrum of things is that Emu is the one big dragon, and then we have the other dragon, you know, trying to stop that dragon, who is Dragon, Monkey D. Dragon. Still not sure why he has that name. I always assumed it was like a
crazy, huh?
Yeah, I always assumed he named himself that, but I guess he didn't. I guess Garp named him that.
Yeah, but like, and then like, you know, the names are spelled out in the katakana, so it's like, it's kind of interesting. It's like, so he's named Dragon, but in the verse, do they see him and think of a dragon, or is it just like, oh, that's a name, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up.
Word.
Dawn and Dusk also brings that up too, how you said the dragon's name is always written in katakana. For anyone who's a little confused by that, in Japanese, there's like multiple forms of their writing, of course, and then whenever you see like those big looking characters that mean like a lot of things, that's like kanji. And in One Piece, they do use the kanji to represent dragons like Ryu, but then with Dragon, his is just written out like dragon. You know, it's not spelled like Ryu, which is interesting.
We have had like one instance in the series where they kind of broke the fourth wall and they actually gave us like a definition based off of another language, and that was with the Nox Pirates with Pedro, where he was like, yeah, Nox means you know, the dawn before the dusk, or I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but it's like, okay, yeah, like Nox is an actual real world word that's not Japanese that they brought into the series and gave an explanation to. So I kind of wonder if that's going to happen for Dragon eventually. Like maybe Garp comes out, he's like, yeah, I named him Dragon because I was thinking of actual dragons. Like we're not too sure how that's going to work out, but it feels very intentional that we have Garp, Dragon, and then Monkey as first names.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Another thing about Dragon is his ship, the Wind Grandma. I guess that sounds cooler in Japanese.
Yeah, it sounds way better in Japanese. In English, we're just thinking about like a windy grandma, you know, grandma's getting blown away.
It's like a black dragon. I mean, it's kind of serpenty throughout the boat, but like the head of it, the stern or whatever you call it, is like a cool looking dragon. Something I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Imu ultimately looks like. Another thing is that the flag, apparently it's changed over the years. Originally it was like a sword, and then it changed into that sword going into a dragon's head. And it just looks interesting. It looks monstery. If you flip it upside down, it could represent a crown with the sword going through it. I don't know, but what I'm getting at is that this could be hinting at Imu's true form, and that maybe Dragon even knows that Imu has a true form, and he's known this whole time. I mean, he's pretty silent when Ivankov is talking about that stuff with Sabo. But
yeah, he didn't say much, huh? They were like, hey, by the way, you know, Imu Narona existed in the past, and then Dragon's just hitting us with a ... He doesn't really speak much about it. He did seem pretty shocked that they existed, but like, what more does he know, right? We don't know anything about Dragon's time spent in the Navy. Like, we don't even know his relationship to Akainu or any of the other admirals. He's just, hey, he worked with the Navy for a little bit, he quit, he became a revolutionary, and that's about it. Like, he is a character who is quite literally still shrouded in mystery, even 1,000 chapters deep.
Yeah, which is hilarious. Him and Mihawk. Mihawk also could have some kind of potential connection to Imu. We won't get too much into that, but just remember, guys, Mihawk might have a connection.
Yeah, Mihawk.
There.
And one thing I want to point out too, one small thing I want to add in, is that maybe the Giants also know a little bit about Imu. So one line that the Giants dropped a long time ago, back at the very end of Little Garden, when they were defeating the giant goldfish, they used their attack, the Hakuoku Sovereignty, and they said that this attack, the only thing it can't pierce is the blood-soaked serpent, which it's a phrase that still lingers with the community to this very day. And a lot of people believe that they were talking about the red line and how they can't break the red line, and that will eventually be one of Luffy's goals. But also, another way to spin this is that maybe, since serpents and dragons are viewed in the same light, maybe they were talking about Imu, or somebody from the world government.
Yeah, it could be a double entendre as well, since, you know, it's kind of implied that Imu constructed the red line to be the way that it is.
Yeah.
It could be both. It's like, you know, breaking the red line and the person who made it. That would be, I would have put it past Oda. He does that stuff.
Yeah, there's something with dragons, man. And then you go back to like Zoro's one-shot, not Zoro's one-shot, the Ryuma one-shot, where the main villain was a Western dragon as well. In a Western town too, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, glad you brought that up. I forgot about that. What is that? Like, what is the Western dragon in the One Piece world? Because apparently it's like a thing that exists, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, I mean, based on the backstory we got in the One Piece filler, which, I'm kind of using that as a headcanon right now, but in the One Piece filler, they said that the Millennium Dragons just died off and they went extinct hundreds of years ago. And they even have their own island that is hidden from the world. So maybe that's the same case here. Maybe there actually existed dragons in the past and they all just died out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that has to be the case because they were a thing for sure, which is
yeah, and
interesting.
it's not the most insane thing to think about as well, since the ancient kingdom apparently had technology so advanced it puts Vegapunk to shame. So if we go back like 900 years, if Western dragons were just flying around willy-nilly, I think that'd be fine. Like it wouldn't suspend the imagination too much.
Oh, that would be a cool visual to see. Yeah.
Dragons versus robots.
That is
exactly like what we saw at the beginning of Egghead Island.
Ah, there you go. I guess there's one more thing that we could talk about. I'll try to go through this as easily as I can. So in the Dawn and Dusk video, they ultimately connect Emu to being the embodiment of the North Star. Now, I'm skipping over a lot of stuff here. It also includes how the Gorosei are all connected to this through a pentagram and a star, which we've also talked about before. But long story short, back in the day, during the Egyptian times, the North Star was in a different location than it is now because of the way the world's axis tilts and over time and whatnot. But it was a part of the Draco constellation, which apparently Dawn and Dusk thinks Emu is based off of, or at least Oda based a part of Emu off of that. And if you look at like an illustration of what the Draco constellation looks like, it's like a serpent dragon, but its tongue is like an arrow. And that's really interesting because we saw that before with Emu back in that sequence when Sabo was firing the fire and Cobra wound up getting stabbed with that thing. Now, we still don't know what it is. I thought that it was one of the other Gorosei at the time, like using their tail to kill Cobra, but now it seems like this might belong to Emu, like more so than anything. And it's not even Emu's tail, it might be Emu's tongue. What do you think about that?
I don't mind that at all. I think the tongue works, the tail works too if he's a dragon. And yeah, I mean, dragons are sharp-tongued. I mean, bringing it back, people do look at dragons and serpents pretty similarly. So, people say that serpents usually have really sharp tongues. So I think that could work.
So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Emu, very likely to be some kind of demonic dragon, Western-looking dragon to some extent. Other than that, the powers could be, like we've been talking about for a very long time, water manipulation, possibly. So once again, I'm with my boy Sai, and we're going to be talking about Emu. But this time, it's really warranted because we finally got to see what Emu looks like and sounds like in the anime. Recently in that episode where he kills, or she kills Cobra. So now that we have all this information, I kind of want to go over all the stuff that we've talked about with Emu so far. Because, there's plenty of videos that we've made talking about Emu. This is going to be another one. But like I said, we can go over what we talked about before and how it might be true now. So the first thing is Emu's voice. I don't want to influence your decision, but what do you think about Emu's voice?
Yeah, Emu's voice, man. I love the robotic sound of it. You can't really distinguish the gender, right? Like, it's a weird mix of like, oh, you could see a guy, you could see a girl. Personally, I would even be happy if this is their real voice. Like, even if we get the unsilhouetted version of Emu, I'd be cool if this is just what they sound like in general. But base level, though, it's very robotic, which I think makes sense, too, considering the fact that during the Void Century, we learned that the Ancient Kingdom had technology better than Egghead. So it's like, oh, like, maybe they had voice changers back then. Maybe Emu has, I don't know, some mechanical implants, I think that'd be pretty cool. It doesn't explain their figure though, because they still are shaped really weirdly. But yeah, the voice is pretty sick.
I agree. It would be cool if that's just their voice and that's what they always sound like. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, if they're like in their Zoan form, then yeah, sure. But base form, maybe not. But I'm inclined to think that Emu is a woman now. I mean, we've always been talking about that, at least that I have. But the voice, yeah, I think sealed the deal. And it almost makes me think that that's why they made Emu's voice distorted like that. Because it just straight up sounds like a woman. So they're trying to like not, I mean, of course that might not be the case. But I think it
We've
is.
we've also talked about a lot of theories about Emu being Lily, even, right? Like, oh, maybe Emu has Lily's body or something of the sort. And the thing with Emu's voice, like, there's so many things you could draw from it. And another thing it reminds me of, outside of it being robotic, is that this sounds like somebody being possessed. So maybe if that's the case with Emu, maybe Emu is a woman, maybe it's a Lily. Maybe Emu's soul is possessing Lily. There's so many ways you could spin this, and it's kind of crazy because in the latest episode of One Piece, which obviously the anime isn't like quote canon necessarily, but we got more shots of their flower room, and the flowers you see in the room, it's confirmed not to be lilies, which is actually that was a big theory back in the day, like, oh, what flowers does Emu have, right?
They're
It looks more like
chrysanthemums, or however you say it, right?
yeah, something like that.
Chrysanthemums.
It's hard to tell because it's like black and white, and the shots are very saturated. They could be that. It could be even tulips. But lilies is definitely out of the question at this point. Now that we have like more shots of the room, unless the anime just flubs it, right? There's also that possibility.
So, speaking of Emu in the flower room, the size of Emu. I mean, I know it was always there, but it was made more apparent now, I think. It's very small, right?
Yeah. Emu is very, very dainty. Like, I feel like if you saw an emu across the street, you'd probably like pick on him. You'd probably push him down the stairs or something. Yeah, emu's really small, but when they transform, they're big. They were like the biggest monster transformation out of the Gorosei.
Yeah, we could get into that now, but I just want to say that we're describing the traits of a woman here. But anyway, so yeah, you are right. Emu's transformation is huge. But not only is it huge, now it seems even bigger than what is even implied in the anime, given how big the Gorosei were in their transformed states at Egghead, right?
Oh yeah, like dude, the Gorosei were bigger than Emmet. Like in that one double spread, like dude, Emmet was like a little kid in comparison to all the Gorosei jumping off the coast of Egghead. So yeah, like Emu is a massive thing, and we didn't really get this context that well in the manga, but in the anime they showed that, in one scene, Emu's like, climbing down the stairs, you see the hands, and then the next minute when they're chasing Sabo and Cobra, they're like bouncing up and down like Pac-Man. And it's like, yo, like where did the hands go? Where are the feet, Like, what is this thing?
Yeah, so the anime did it very well. Great sequence, I gotta put that out there. And still don't know if that solidifies that it's a dragon, because in the last Emu video we talked about, possibly being like a Western style dragon. When Emu does eat the fire, it still holds up. I would say it looks even more dragon-esque in the anime sequence than it does in the manga panel. But the other directions and angles that we see of it makes it look just, like an ambiguous monster. Also with its tail. It could be the dragon tail, or it could be like a devil tail, or I don't know, some kind of unique creature, but Oda doesn't really do, unique stuff like that. That's not really a knock on him. He's very, adaptive, So, given that the Gorosei are all known yokais, I assume Emu will follow suit with that to some extent.
Yeah, Oda is the type of guy that he would watch, like, a movie or read an article or see a cool story, and then he'd twist it and bring it into One Piece. I mean, that's true for everything we've seen, right? Even Gear 5th. Oda said the main inspiration was Tom and Jerry. I am leaning towards the cartoon devil aspect of Emu more now that we have that anime episode where they're bouncing up and down, because it does remind me of Luffy when he's fighting Rob Lucci. Luffy bounces into the ground, then he jumps up and it's just a giant head trying to chomp him down. That's kind of what that scene reminded me of, watching Emu chase Sabo and Cobra. And it's like, yeah, like out of Oda's interview talking about Tom and Jerry, he said the hard part about drawing Luffy's Gear 5th fights is that Luffy is the only one doing shenanigans. He said the reason why Tom and Jerry works is because you have two of them, and they can both do the same thing. So it's like, yo, like, if Emu is a cartoon devil, if Emu has, abilities like Luffy, but just darker, then I think that could fit really well. And that could be, like, I wouldn't say one of the greatest fights in anime, but it would be one of the most unique fights.
I mean, it would be fun, for sure. Like, Toon Force people going at it in a world where only they have that ability. Yeah, that would be really interesting. But to play devil's advocate to Emu appearing to be cartoony and devilish in this episode, while they do, for sure. And I was thinking that at first when I saw it. I was like, that's really weird the way that Emu looks. And then I was thinking, am I reading too much into it? And then I was looking at the Gorosei. And the Gorosei are similar, kind of, to Emu in this sequence, in the way that they're depicted. And I, you know, comparing what the Gorosei's silhouette looks like in this episode to what they actually look like in the manga, and it's like, if we do that for Emu, then things are going to be drastically different, you know?
Oh, 100%. Like, dude, all of the Gorosei looked so goofy in that episode, and even in the manga they did too, right? But the thing with the manga, at least, is that we could kind of pick out what they were. You know, there was nobody out there who got, like, you know, 5 for 5, but I saw some people get, like, the Itsumare one, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like Bakotsu, he just looked goofy. Jupiter the giant worm, he looked really goofy. And that's kind of how it is. And it makes me wonder, like, you know, since Sabo was in that room, obviously he saw, like, what they are. I wonder if we'll ever get a scene where when Sabo meets Luffy or meets Bonnie or somebody else, he's like, hey, by the way, Emu looks like this. You know, like, he could probably draw it out, right? Like, he could draw, like, word for word and, like, you know, description for description, like, what Emu looks like. And that's the craziest part. You know, they're silhouetted to us, but Sabo saw them.
So, to reverse Devil Advocate, back to it supporting the devil theory.
Yeah.
Sabo says, you know, in this sequence, like, oh, I didn't know I was in hell. I'm paraphrasing. But, you know, he says something like that. So, maybe he said that for a reason. You know, like, oh, Emu's the freaking devil.
Yeah. He looks up there and he just sees, like, a devil on a throne, which is very, very typical, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you think of, like, all depictions of the devil, he's always sitting on his throne.
All right, so in chapter 184, we once again saw the final boss, or the implied to be final boss of One Piece, and the shadow ruler of the world government, Emu. I think this is like the third time or so we've seen this character in the series, but her appearance in this chapter has led to a lot of speculation and a lot of theories attached to it. And I'm going to go over one of the popular theories. I'm not sure who came up with this one, but it is fascinating, and I would love to go over it with you guys. But anyway, like I said, in chapter 184, we see Emu show up, and that's because Cobra finally had his meeting with the Gorosei. This is, of course, a flashback to 1 month earlier when the reverie was still going on, and, of course, right before Cobra was killed. He goes on to talk to the Gorosei about the formation of the world government and how only 19 of the original monarchs that formed the world government decided to go to Marijois to become celestial dragons. However, there was one that didn't, and it was the ruler of Alabasta 800 years ago by the name of Queen Lily. However, she didn't return to Alabasta like he originally thought, and he wanted to ask the Gorosei like what they knew about it. And of course, they give him a non-answer because the Gorosei will never tell the truth about anything, especially anything related or remotely related to the Void Century. But then he goes on to ask them what D means, like the initial D, you know, like Monkey D. Luffy. And afterwards, Emu suddenly appears walking up the steps to the empty throne. This is incredible because Emu is revealing herself to someone besides the Gorosei. They're even like, great, Emu! King Cobra is still present. And she looks at Cobra and says, Lily. Then she sits on the empty throne. Now, before I go any further, you'll notice that I'm calling Emu a she, despite the gender of this character never being revealed. And I say this because it goes into the theory that I adapted from Uteron, and it's that Emu is likely based on Kaguya Hime from The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. I won't bore you with that story again, but I'll have a video linked at the end of this video explaining all of that stuff. But long story short, Emu is very likely to be the Moon Princess. I'm not sure if it's like the moon that Enel is currently on, but one of the satellite planets in the One Piece world at minimum. But anyway, her being a princess, or the theory of it, is important because it's going to go into what the main theory about this video is. So the thing that really sparked all of this is the panel of us seeing Emu listening to the conversation between Cobra and the Gorosei in this. You see Emu in the Chamber of Flowers, and she's listening through a Denden Mushi on like this pillar table thing. And if you'll notice, Emu isn't much taller than this pillar table thing. We could just assume that this is like a normal size table, so Emu is pretty small. So small, in fact, that you could say that she might even be a child. And that's fascinating because it's going to lead into another thing. I mean, aside from the, you know, the twist of Emu being a child this whole time, and it led to another theory that, like, wait, have we already seen what Emu is? Like Oda foreshadowing what Emu is through another character? And that character is Sugar. Sugar, one of the officers of the Don Quixote pirates. Now, before I even go more into that, let's just point out the aesthetic similarities, which I didn't notice before because, you know, I'm stupid, but Sugar has a crown. And I always thought that was odd. I thought it was just her being, I don't know, full of herself or something, but maybe it's because Oda is, like I said, trying to tell us what Imu is through this character. Now also, Sugar has like a hoodie on, but I think it's supposed to parallel to Imu's veil that she wears. I mean, we kind of could have made out that this was a veil before, but it's super evident. Chapter 1084 in the panel where Imu says Lily. Like, you can clearly see that this is like a veil. And this big pointy thing on top of her head, of course, is a crown. So that right there is very similar to what's going on with Sugar's appearance. And also, Sugar's left eye is covered by like a monocle thing, and the left eye being marked is, you know, heavily recurring symbolism in this series. We see it with tons of characters and just tons of things in general. I won't go too much into that, but it possibly could mean the truth about Laugh Tale or the One Piece itself, like it being removed from Jaya maybe, I don't know. But the real parallel here is not just Sugar's aesthetic, but her devil fruit ability. So before I explain what it is, in case you need a refresher, I'll just say the first time I read Dressrosa, I was perplexed by Sugar's fruit being so oddly specific in its abilities and why it had so many. So she ate the Habi Habi no Mi, or the Habi Habi fruit, and it allows the user to transform living people into toys and erase their memories of their existence from others. And also it grants the eater eternal youth. So like I said, I was like, why does it have all of these abilities? I mean, I kind of get it, you know, because of toys and kids, but still, this is like 3 abilities in one. And the eternal youth thing is like such a significant ability that it's like one of the secret main abilities of the Ope Ope no Mi, which we'll get into. But this is interesting because, like I said, I'm pretty sure this is Oda telling us what Imu is and what Imu has done, because making others into toys and erasing their memories, of course, goes back to the Void Century, something that is mentioned in this chapter, as it is in many, but the Void Century is, as it implies, a century-long gap. There was like 100 years, around 800 to 900 years ago, that are just unaccounted for. We know nothing about it, only through the poneglyphs, of course, which is forbidden to study, but that's a direct parallel right there. Her turning people into toys, them forgetting, such as the world with the Void Century. And I guess her turning people into toys could, I don't know, be a parallel to Imu's subjects, like the world government themselves. They're just toys to her, which is, you know, plausible. But the eternal youth thing, because like we were just talking about, Imu seems to be the size of a child. And if you've been following my channel for a while now, you know I've been talking about my theory constantly about what I think is going on with these people that have eyes like Imu. You know, the double ringed eyes. We see it in Mihawk, we see it in Hakuba, we see it in Zunisha, and I'm pretty staunch on the fact that this is a direct result of someone having the perpetual youth surgery performed on them. You know, the secret ultimate ability of the Ope Ope no Mi that Doflamingo explained to us, and which Blackbeard might have Law forcefully performed on him at some point. Or, you know, something like that. We'll see what happens. But I've always said that Imu very likely has had the perpetual youth surgery performed on her, and a big twist here is that it was possibly performed on her when she was a child, meaning that she is always going to be a child, just the way that Sugar is. Because Sugar is like 22, but I guess she ate the fruit when she was like 10 or 12 or something. And I think the same thing for sure happened to Imu. Now, this is another story for another time, but it's very possible that like Joy Boy himself performed the surgery onto Imu, forever trapping her as a child as like one last joke to her. I know there's like little to no evidence to support that, but it's just something I just want to put out there. We don't have to, you know, take it for gospel. It's just some fun speculation. Maybe I'll make another video going into that, but I'll probably forget that I even said it. But yeah, that's like the big theory, possible twist here. Imu is a child who has had the perpetual youth surgery performed on her. But not only that, but she's also like the moon princess, or the princess of the moon people, or one of the moon people. Came down and, you know, now she's the ruler, and who's to say why she did what she did? That still has yet to be revealed, and we could speculate for hours and hours about that, but I do fully think that this whole Sugar being a parallel to Imu is absolutely true. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this in the comments. So let me know. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.